I saw a video by one of my favorite historians recently, a man by the name of Niall Ferguson. And one of the things that he pointed out is that although the establishment will argue that Donald Trump has had no major impact on American foreign policy or on American politics and that he's just been an aberration, the reality is one of the most consequential aspects of his legacy, should he leave office in the coming months, will be that he has fundamentally shifted the way that the United States views China.
In a column, the historical impact of Trump lies in the fact that he changed the course of U.S. policy toward China. It directed the American public into a completely different frame of mind regarding China, including the Democrats. Was it right for this administration to take the hard line with Beijing?
Well, I argued for some time that we're in Cold War II, but the Chinese government, the Chinese Communist Party really started it, and it just took the United States a while to wake up to the threat that China was posing in all kinds of different domains.
The reality is the establishment for a long time, for years really going all the way back, as he points out, to Henry Kissinger in the Nixon era, is that China is not really an enemy of the United States, is that China should really be, someone we should work with and we should trade with and we should, just seek to do all these things with. And for the longest time, that has been the approach of the establishment, is that China has continued to rise, has continued to approach superpower status, all the while the corporatists at the top in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party as well have simply just been profiting off China's rise. They've just been looking the other way at a lot of the human rights abuses and a lot of the civil liberties issues, and just have been just fueling China's rise. And we saw with Donald Trump that he very early came on, even during the campaign and during his administration. It was one of his promises that he actually did follow through on, is that he challenged China on trade, he challenged China on civil liberties, he challenged China on everything. He went out and he challenged China. And the reality is that fundamental shift will remain in U.S. politics. Now, I do think that the Biden administration, when they come in, that these establishment Democrats will try to restart sort of this relationship with China. They'll start to go back to profiteering, go back to the same trade agreements. But the reality is the shift in the Republican Party has been away from this. And any Republican administration that will try to run against the Democrats will run on an anti-China platform. And that will be because of the work of Donald Trump. And again, this is a fundamental shift from both the Republican and the Democratic establishment. Because for the longest time, what the establishment has been telling us is that we need to look at Russia. Russia is the big threat to the United States. Interference in our election is the big threat to the United States. Interference in democracies in Europe, that's the biggest threat to the United States, is this Russian country. But the reality is Russia is a shrinking population. They're not the same military threat they were under the, in the Cold War. And in many ways, especially on things like, religion, they're much different than the Soviet Union. There's been a really big resurgence of the Orthodox Church in Russia, big changes in Russia. And the reality is there's really no reason, and as Trump recognized, there's no reason to look at Russia as the big evil empire that's a threat to the United States. Really, in the modern era, the biggest challenge to the United States is China. And second to that is the threat of radical Islam and groups like ISIS. And maybe third to that would be a country like Iran. But the reality is, because of Trump, we now have a major shift, and people are really starting to recognize that China is the major threat to the United States. And that change in policy that Trump really brought about will be the lasting legacy of his administration on a foreign policy level. His change in thinking towards China will resonate through the Republican Party for decades to come. And that should be viewed as a major and significant accomplishment of his administration.